This discovery was ignored by the media. But now, there's no hiding it anymore. Scientists are shocked by a metallic sphere found in Brazil that defies everything we knew. A perfectly spherical structure, seamless, with no visible openings, composed of a material that has not yet been fully identified, and that seems to react to magnetic stimuli in an inexplicable way. The object has been informally named Buga sphere, naming the place where it was found, but the origin of this sphere remains a mystery shrouded in layers and layers of unanswered questions. Initial reports indicate that this artifact emits a slight vibration, barely perceptible to the naked eye but recorded by high-precision sensors. And, most impressively, it emits a sound. A sound that cannot be heard by anyone, but that has been described by experts as a frequency outside the human spectrum. Are we looking at a piece of evidence, an artifact left by non-human intelligences, or an ancient device that has remained hidden for centuries, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? While international agencies remain silent and the main media outlets remain focused on other issues, small groups of independent scientists have been mobilizing to investigate the phenomenon. One of them, on condition of anonymity, stated, "This was not created by any known technology. We are facing something that could rewrite the history of humanity." The statement is strong, but what lies behind this sphere seems to be even more disturbing. Confidential documents have begun leaking onto the deep web, showing thermal images and spectrometric analyses that indicate the presence of a dense core, surrounded by layers that resemble defensive shields. Something unthinkable in terms of current engineering. Some say the sphere could be an extraterrestrial data capsule, containing codes or hidden information that we have not yet been able to decipher. Others believe it is a message, a sign, a warning, and perhaps most disturbingly, this would not be an isolated case. There are erased records, hidden in Brazilian military archives, of similar objects sighted in other parts of the country in recent decades. Always suppressed, always forgotten. Could we be facing a series of visits, a pattern that is now gradually revealing itself, despite efforts to cover it up? The Buga sphere may be just the beginning. But why now? Why, at this very moment in human history, is such an artifact resurfacing, drawing the silent gaze of governments, scientists, and theorists around the world? The answer is still elusive, but each new piece of evidence seems to indicate that the veil between what we know and what has been hidden for centuries is about to fall. The Buga sphere was discovered by chance in a densely wooded area in the interior of Brazil, in a small town that never imagined it would be at the center of a possible ancient secret. The first reports came from local residents who heard a metallic sound coming from the forest, as if something were pulsing underground. A group of hikers came across the partially buried object, reflecting the sunlight in an unusual way, almost as if it were coated in an invisible electromagnetic field. The appearance of the sphere is mesmerizing, perfectly smooth with a dark, dense metallic shine without any type of welding, seam, or visible mark. No seam, no entrance. A technology that seems not of this world. Weighing hundreds of kilograms and measuring just over a meter in diameter, it defies any rational explanation. Local geologists tried to identify the type of metal, but the results pointed to an unknown alloy, a combination that does not exist naturally on Earth. The equipment used for testing began to fail near the object. Compasses spun out of control. Drones crashed as they approached, and even the radios used for communication between researchers began to emit distorted sounds. It was as if something inside the sphere was interfering with the surrounding systems, as if there were an intelligence acting silently, watching. The case quickly caught the attention of scholars around the world. Experts in astrophysics, alternative archaeology, and even military engineers began to speculate. Some believe it is an ancient probe left behind by an advanced civilization. Others claim it could be a surveillance device, an alien eye, hidden for millennia and recently activated for some unknown reason. The first leaked videos of the object show its glow pulsing at irregular intervals as if it were breathing, as if it were alive. And maybe it is. The discovery of the Buga sphere set off a chain reaction within the scientific community. It wasn't long before physicists, aerospace engineers, and alternative archaeologists began to weigh in, each trying to offer an explanation, although none of them managed to truly decipher the enigma. Among the first to speak out was renowned physicist Dr. Ezequiel Torres, who declared during an informal interview, "No analysis explains how it was made. This kind of precision in an unknown material with unstable properties is like trying to decipher a code without language." The phrase echoed like a warning among those behind the scenes of traditional science, raising suspicions that something truly extraordinary had been discovered. Some researchers suggest that the sphere exhibits electromagnetic behavior that does not conform to any of the known laws of modern physics. Others report that at certain moments the field around the object undergoes sudden variations, as if it were reacting to the presence of a human. This has sparked a heated debate about whether the sphere possesses some form of artificial intelligence or, even more disturbing, self-awareness. Universities and research centers have begun to form independent study committees, but there are signs that parts of these studies are being quietly censored, withheld from the public. Meanwhile, specialized forums and alternative science publications have been publishing theories that the major media outlets refuse to discuss. Some say that the object is a probe sent from another dimension, or even a capsule storing information from an era that official history insists on ignoring. Unofficial documents, supposedly leaked from within intelligence agencies, state that this is not the only artifact of this type that has appeared on Brazilian soil, but it would be the most active, the most awake, as some prefer to call it. Among scholars, suspicion is growing that the Buga sphere may contain within it an energy source that has never been identified before, something that completely challenges our understanding of matter and technology. And no matter how much they try to keep everything secret, global interest continues to grow, as if something, or someone, were pulling the strings behind this mystery. The first scientific analyses carried out on the Buga sphere revealed data that, to this day, completely defy academic logic. The material of its composition has not yet been accurately classified. Spectroscopy and atomic analysis tests indicate the presence of extremely rare metallic elements, some of which are not even recognized in the official periodic table, which immediately raised the hypothesis that we are dealing with an artificial or extraterrestrial compound. The density of the object is another point that intrigues experts. It is so high that, theoretically, it should not float or maintain stability on the ground without sinking, but it remains motionless, as if an invisible force were maintaining its balance. There are also records of gravitational variations in the immediate surroundings of the sphere, a phenomenon that cannot be explained by any conventional property of matter. In the laboratory, when exposed to extreme temperatures, the surface of the sphere does not react in a predictable way. Below zero, the metal does not contract. Under intense heat, it does not expand. And in every attempt to cut, drill, or abrade, the material remained intact, simply insurmountable. Some scientists claim that not even with our current technology would we be able to replicate this, not even in controlled environments or with the most advanced materials we have at our disposal. It is as if the sphere had been shaped in an environment that obeys other physical laws, outside of Earth or by intelligences with a much greater understanding of molecular engineering than ours. Furthermore, magnetic field measurements have revealed constant, gentle, intermittent pulses, as if the sphere were emitting signals or trying to communicate in a cryptic language. Certain devices have recorded specific oscillations around 432 Hz, a frequency that, interestingly, is present in ancient theories of cosmic harmony and interdimensional communication. This repetitive pattern has led researchers to suggest that the sphere may be attuned to some sort of unknown energy source, or even something yet to come. As if it were a cosmic clock, keeping time for something we don't yet fully understand. And each new test seems to reveal yet another impossible detail, yet another anomaly that escapes the formulas and certainties of modern science. With all this disconcerting data, it was inevitable that the most daring theories would start to gain traction. One of the most talked about among theoretical physicists and astrobiology enthusiasts is that the Buga sphere is, in fact, a fragment of alien technology, perhaps part of a ship, a reconnaissance probe, or even an interstellar communication mechanism. This hypothesis gained momentum after records of electromagnetic patterns emitted by the sphere that resemble coded sequences, something that could be interpreted as an attempt to establish contact or transmit information to a receiving intelligence. The possibility that this sphere was planted here thousands of years ago, waiting for the right moment to be activated, is discussed in alternative academic forums as one of the most coherent explanations, albeit extremely disturbing. Others, however, believe that this object is an ancient artifact, a legacy of an advanced civilization that inhabited the Earth much earlier than conventional history allows us to accept. According to this line of thinking, the sphere would be hidden proof that there were cultures with technological knowledge far beyond what we know today, cultures that disappeared for unknown reasons and left behind symbolic traces, such as pyramids, monuments aligned with constellations, and now this impenetrable sphere. Researchers who follow this line of thinking claim that there are similarities between the geometry of the Buga sphere and symbols found at archaeological sites such as Göbekli Tepe and Puma Punku, which raises the possibility of an ancient and deliberate connection between the continents, the eras, and perhaps even the heavens. There are also those who try to apply explanations within the limits of natural science, suggesting that we are dealing with a geological or astrophysical phenomenon that is not yet understood. Some geologists speculate that the sphere could be the result of an extremely rare natural process, formed under conditions of pressure and temperature never before reproduced in a laboratory. But this hypothesis weakens with each new analysis, especially in light of the active electromagnetic behavior and the total absence of known mineral patterns. No natural process, so far catalogued, would be capable of generating such a perfectly spherical object with such sophisticated physical properties. What if this is just the tip of the iceberg? This uncomfortable and insistent question echoes in each new technical report, in each video that is leaked to the public, in each inexplicable silence coming from the authorities who should be conducting this investigation with total transparency. As studies of the Buga sphere progress, researchers have begun to draw disturbing parallels with historical records and forgotten prophecies. Ancient civilizations spoke of celestial globes that held sacred knowledge, and these accounts, previously treated as myths, now take on new weight in light of the materiality of these objects. Ancient Sumerian scriptures mention metallic spheres that descended from the heavens carrying divine instructions. In ancient Egypt, hieroglyphs describe eyes of Ra that silently observed the earth. In Vedic India, there are texts that mention circular artifacts that floated and emitted vibrations, artifacts that only the gods knew how to manipulate. These records, long marginalized by conventional science, now reappear as pieces of a puzzle that seem much more real than previously assumed. Among Brazilian indigenous tribes, including those in the region close to the discovery of the Buga sphere, there are legends passed down orally that speak of a stone egg left by the Brothers of the Stars. The elders say that this dormant egg would one day open to reveal the language of the sky. The most disturbing thing is that the vibrations recorded in the sphere have resonances very close to ancestral shamanic chants from that same area, as if an ancient code were slowly being reactivated. Could it be a coincidence or a carefully designed synchronicity by intelligences that were always one step ahead? Furthermore, apocryphal texts linked to the Book of Enoch, widely studied by theologians and occultists, describe spheres of light imprisoned beneath the earth that would reveal themselves in times of tribulation. The object found in Buga has been interpreted by some spiritual scholars as the literal fulfillment of these visions. In other words, the artifact could be part of a revelation encoded in the very foundations of ancient religions. Prophets, visionaries, and mystics from various cultures have predicted the emergence of objects that would speak without words and bring with them the truth of the cosmos, the connection between the divine and the technological. Some even believe that the emergence of the sphere may have been predicted in the centuries of Nostradamus, whose encrypted verses mention the arrival of an eye without flesh, which will see the end of the cycle of men. The convergence of archaeological findings, spiritual legends, and historical records begins to form a pattern that defies the notion of linear time and suggests that perhaps everything is connected by an intelligence that acts beyond the limits of our understanding. And the more research is done, the more evidence points to the Buga sphere not being an isolated anomaly, but rather part of something much larger, much older, and possibly announced millennia ago under different names and symbolic languages that, to this day, we do not fully understand. With the accumulation of data, analyses, and historical correlations, a new impasse arises: the dilemma of proof. Despite the increasing number of evidence, compelling and disturbing, traditional science still demands a level of confirmation that, in this case, seems impossible to achieve. It is as if the very existence of the sphere defies the laws of logic. Instruments fail, theoretical models do not fit, and any attempt to replicate the phenomena observed around the object results in failure or in unexpected events. This raises an uncomfortable question for the scientific community. How can we prove something that escapes the validation methods we have always used? How can we measure the incalculable? How can we document the inexplicable? This dilemma is compounded by the fact that the Buga sphere appears to respond selectively to its environment. In some tests, it remains inert, like a harmless piece of metal. In others, without any apparent change in context, it emits frequencies, distorts signals, and even affects nearby electronic devices. This erratic behavior prevents controlled repetition of experiments, a fundamental pillar of the scientific method. This has led some researchers to suggest that the sphere operates with some kind of adaptive intelligence, reacting to the observer deliberately, as if choosing what to show, when, and to whom. Skeptics argue that without concrete, replicable evidence, it's all just speculation. But data, even fragmented ones, keep emerging, challenging this stance. There are thermal photographs, magnetic readings, sound recordings, and even changes in energy fields near the ground. All real, all documented, but none conclusive enough to be accepted by the most conservative scientific publications. And the more one tries to fit the sphere into a rational explanation, the more it eludes. As if the very concept of evidence needed to be redefined in the face of an artifact that behaves like no other object ever found on Earth. Some say that we are trying to decipher a code written in another language, by a civilization that thinks differently, feels differently, and interprets reality differently. How can we prove something when the tools we have are perhaps too primitive to understand what we have before us? This paradox has placed the Buga sphere at the center of an even deeper philosophical and epistemological debate. Is truth only valid when it can be measured? Or are there truths that only reveal themselves to those who are ready to see them? In the meantime, experts continue to gather evidence, confront theories, and seek patterns amid what appears to be a living anomaly that refuses to be dissected. Faced with so many unsolved mysteries, it is impossible not to wonder, what if this is a message? What if we were never alone? The mere presence of the Buga sphere, with its inexplicable properties, its unusual behavior, and its connection to ancient stories, forces us to reconsider what we call reality. And at this moment, the person watching is not just a curious spectator, but a fundamental part of this equation. Because this type of discovery is not just about science or archaeology. It is about identity, about existence, about belonging to something greater than ourselves. How many times have we felt small when looking at the sky? What if, instead of just looking, we are being watched? What if this sphere is a reminder, a silent echo coming from intelligences that surpass our understanding, but that, in some way, have always been connected to us? Perhaps this is the true purpose behind something so seemingly simple, yet immensely powerful, to make us question. And not only about the origin of the universe or what exists outside of it, but what exists within us. Because each discovery like this activates a spark that was dormant, that almost forgotten feeling that there is something beyond the routine, beyond the visible, beyond the ready explanation. Why did this sphere appear now, at this exact point in our history? Why is it being discovered by a generation that lives connected, but at the same time more disconnected from its spiritual essence than ever before? It is as if a silent intelligence were giving us a push, a wake-up call from a collective torpor. And when you think about it, it all starts to make sense. The legends, the signs, the recurring patterns in nature and mathematics, everything seems to converge on a common point: the certainty that there is an order, a greater consciousness that perhaps is trying to guide us. And you, who are listening to me now, are part of this. It is no coincidence that you are watching this video at this moment. Perhaps you have already felt this presence. Perhaps you have already questioned the official narrative, felt that there was something wrong, something missing. Now, faced with the Buga sphere, this feeling intensifies, as if something inside you were being activated, as if finally some pieces were starting to fit together. And as much as skeptics try to reduce everything to simple coincidence, the truth is that there are questions that should never be silenced. At this point, we are no longer just talking about a strange object found on Brazilian soil. The Buga sphere has become a symbol, a breaking point between what we thought we knew and what, until then, we preferred to ignore. It is as if this artifact had emerged not only from the Earth, but from a distant past or a future that has not yet arrived, carrying with it a silent presence that observes us while we pretend that everything is normal. But something has changed. It has changed in you. It has changed in the way we begin to see what is around us. The question now is no longer what it is, but why did it appear now? We live in an era where information circulates faster than ever, but paradoxically, we have become increasingly insensitive to the extraordinary. We have lost the ability to look at the inexplicable with humility, and we try to fit everything into formulas, theories, boxes, and then this sphere appears, challenging all of that. She doesn't speak, but she communicates. He doesn't move, but he takes us out of place. It does not attack, but confronts our perception of reality. And the most disturbing thing is that perhaps it has been waiting for exactly this moment to emerge. A time when humanity is divided, tired, immersed in misinformation, but at the same time, thirsty for something true, something that breaks the monotony of manufactured truths. Some scholars have begun to propose that the sphere is actually a type of cosmic mirror, not in the literal sense, but as a symbolic reflection of our evolution, or lack thereof. The moment of its discovery would not be by chance, but an exact point on a map of events drawn long before our understanding. A reminder that there are forces at play that cannot be controlled, only observed, felt, perhaps deciphered over time. This narrative, as esoteric as it may seem at first glance, begins to gain strength when we put side by side the patterns, the prophecies, the ignored signs, and this collective feeling that something bigger is about to happen. What if we are living in a transitional phase? What if this is all part of a larger cycle, where certain artifacts, certain messages, are released when the planet, or humanity itself, reaches a certain stage of maturity. It's as if the sphere is testing us, challenging us to look beyond the obvious, beyond fear, beyond matter. As if silently saying that the true enigma is not in the object itself, but in what it awakens within each person who dares to question it. Because, deep down, the deepest mystery may not be outside, but inside. And so, faced with the Buga sphere, we find ourselves at a point of no return. We can no longer pretend that nothing happened. We can no longer look at this object and treat it as just a geological anomaly or a scientific misinterpretation. Something bigger is at stake, an enigma that cannot be solved with hasty explanations, a presence that cannot be ignored. The sphere is here, and the simple fact that it exists at this very moment in history changes everything. Because more than challenging our science, it forces us to confront our deepest beliefs. And maybe, just maybe, it was not made to be understood. At least, not by everyone, but by those who can see beyond the veil, feel what is slowly being revealed, and recognize that certain truths can no longer remain hidden. Do you believe this is of extraterrestrial origin? Then, comment below. The truth needs to be told. If you've made it this far, it means you're part of this group that seeks answers, that doesn't accept easy explanations, that wants to understand what's being hidden. So, leave your like to show that this content makes sense to you. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the next videos. There's a lot more coming. In the next video, I'll show you another artifact that was found that has the same pattern as the sphere. And it was found in an even more unbelievable place. Watch the video that's appearing on your screen now